Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me today as your guest, presenting one of my favorite topics about cloud security and how we can secure our journey, our digital transformation journey to the cloud. My name is Ahmed Nabil. I'll be your guest today and host as well. I'm a cloud security architect, a regional information security manager. I'm a Microsoft MVP, most valuable professional for the last 8 years in the area of enterprise security, cloud, and data center. I'm an award winner. I speak normally at several conferences internationally and regionally as well. And I've been recently awarded the Microsoft Regional Director Award. These are my contacts and social media contacts, so anyone can just get in touch with me to exchange ideas about the cloud and the digital transformation. When you think about the cloud computing, we go back to the basics, the NIST, which is the main definition about the cloud. We find that the NIST defined the cloud as an on-demand self-service, a broad network access, offers resource pooling, rapid elasticity, and a measured service. While all this looks nice, but does this really help us as a security professional? As you can see, the definition is geared more toward the availability and the resiliency and the elasticity options of the cloud. But what about the security? There have been always misconception that moving to the cloud means that we are secure. But is that the truth? Let's go back to summer 2019, which is almost 1 year from now. What happened? Capital One, the personal information of around 100 million individuals were stolen from Capital One AWS cloud state. Is this a problem with AWS? What was the problem actually? So many have speculated that this breach was perhaps the result of maybe a previously known zero-day vulnerability, maybe that was not patched, or an insider attack or something like this. However, the problem was really because there was a misconfigured open source WAF, web application firewall, that Capital One was using as part of its operation, which is hosted in AWS. So it was not the AWS problem. It was mainly misconfiguration, which means human error. Someone misconfigured this WAF with an excessive privilege, where the attacker was able to leverage this and use it to read the content of sensitive information in the AWS. So how can this be prevented? Yes, first of all, least privilege. We need to apply the principle of the least privilege. Go back to the security basics of both human and machine access. We need to involve security practitioners skilled. We need maybe to do some kind of audits and test everywhere. However, this is not the cloud issue. It's still our issue. And people need to understand that moving to the cloud doesn't mean that we are secure. It means that it opens some kind of opportunities for us to be better in security, but we need to do some kind of stuff on this. When we think about the current threat landscape, for example, the current threat evolution, we need to understand that threat evolution is really expanding now. So back in the old days, everything was that mainly about the massive mass distribution malwares. But the attacker techniques are always evolving, are always changing. We have been noticing a maturity. That's the best word that can measure. We're using maturity in the attacker business models, from the mass distribution to tailored target malware, where we have a malware which is targeting specific organizations and in some time targeting specific countries as well, to the fileless malware. And with the fileless malware, we can see the investment in the evasion of file-based detections using PowerShell techniques, for example, to load attacks directly inside the memory, and other similar methods. And then we move to the malware-less attacks, where recently you can see that a lot of attack campaigns, and it's mainly about phishing attack campaigns, and you can just say that social engineering attacks, where nothing is touched, there's no technology here, it's mainly attacking the human itself. So you can see that threat evolution is really accelerating with a lot of things coming. And at the same time, with the increase of this threat and the evolution, our enterprise is in transformation. So many businesses now are transforming rapidly. And why they're doing this? Because they need to compete with digital native startups. Think about the latest pandemic that we're living in now, and this new normal that we're living in, this COVID situation, and how companies were able to survive and compete because they have been in a digital transformation. Actually, there's been this kind of nice question, joke or something that I've seen recently on LinkedIn about what's the main driver of digital transformation. Is it the CISO or the CIO, or is it the COVID? And actually the answer is the COVID. So people are trying to compete to stay alive, to compete with some startups that have been born in the cloud. This is the driving need for this transformation. And then there's these components that will support this transformation. One of these components, for example, is our SaaS solutions, our SaaS applications, where you can just go directly and tap into one of these applications and all these solutions without checking all the underlying infrastructure. You're just mainly concerned about the application. Another thing also is the mobiles. Think about the mobiles and the mobile experience. And now people are demanding a first-class mobile experience. Back maybe few years back, yes, we used to have this mobile application, but we always get this message that this mobile application, it's limited on the mobile, while if you want to move to the full features of application, you need to go to the desktop version. And then we have the IoT, or the Internet of Things, which is something completely different and will change the whole era about things. Everything now is connected. Transformation of this, the availability of the cloud, mobile, and the Internet of Things technology, this is fueling the whole transformation experience that we are going through now. And then when you think about this, we need to understand that we have now something called dual perimeters. And why we're having these dual perimeters? Because we will always be in this hybrid mode for a long time. So people now are still in a hybrid mode. They have some data on-prem and they're starting moving to the cloud. Only the very, very new startups or new companies that have been born inside the cloud. So we will be living with these dual perimeters. And what they mean by dual perimeters is that the old perimeter, which is the classical perimeter, which is the network controls. Again, this is part of the transition period. We need to manage these two styles of perimeters. The network control, back in the old days again, where you used to go to your own company, work in the company, access the servers inside the company, access the network shares inside the company. So you're being governed and controlled by this network perimeter. When you get out of this network, you're not able to work anymore. Think of it now. Everyone is working on their own devices, maybe some company devices, remotely, not in any branch or any office, anywhere, as they say, on any device. So what will be the main identity? The main perimeter will be your identity. This will be your perimeter, it's identity, and how you verify your identity. Your identity, which is your username or password and MFA, for example, is the main perimeter. Once you enter username, once you enter your password, everything will be open to you. And that's why it's one of the most riskiest things that we'll be discussing now in the next few slides. And now with this comes something called the Zero Trust. Now this is another acronym that a lot of people have been using. Zero Trust is not an old thing, it's not an old methodology, it's not an old something, it's not a technology, it's about a way of thinking. It's been there for a long time. The problem is that the software was not able to support this zero trusting. Now again, with the advancement of things like the cloud, we were able to support the zero trust. An organization will reach the full zero trust once they have migrated all the legacy workloads to the modern platforms. And why the modern platforms? Because with this modern platforms, authorization decisions are based on integrated signals from your identity. You will be asked and requested to provide your identity whenever you open any new application, whenever you connect to any new device. This will take time. And that's why to reach a full zero trust will be a long journey, working parallel with your digital transformation as well. And then, as you mentioned, there will be some evolution for roles and responsibilities. So, for example, think about the roles of the administration. Instead of doing the manual administration, think about the authoring and the governance automation. Again, as the networks, the containment of the network to be containment at all layers. The development, back in the time we made quality check before the releases. Now we're thinking about the DevOps and the DevSecOps, where the main thing is to get a value as soon as possible. Instead of waiting, for example, for 6 months or 1 year to get some kind of first draft or first version or first model of your software. Now people are looking DevOps, where you need to develop something as soon as possible. You have this kind of lanes, you have those old kind of concepts in the DevOps to deliver something maybe in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Important, deliver the value to your customers. Think about the project-based engagement, the start to end, and then think about now the new continuous engagement and improvement. This will be the new norm that will be in the upcoming thing. And then when you think about the information security in this transformation, how we can support this, think about things like the enterprise IT. So we're expecting enterprise infrastructure, which is data centers, networks, to inevitably be a hybrid on premises and cloud for some time. This will happen because we cannot just transform the whole thing all of a sudden. Legacy system will take some years to migrate. And then once it's migrated to the cloud, you can leverage the full features inside the cloud. Technology, mobility, and volumes exporting. Increasing demand, as I mentioned, the first-class experience for mobile devices. Variance in trustworthiness of mobile devices, again, between different mobile devices and different applications. Pervasive digital transformation, IT adoption is driving a wave of app development and cloud usage. And you have to think about IT, it's not the normal computer that you can secure. It's a totally different thing, where it depends on different methodologies than the normal things. The enterprise PC security strategies will apply poorly to the IoT device, as I mentioned. And then don't forget the increasingly hostile environment. Attack surface, again, back to the old days, remember the network perimeter, where you have your own network perimeter, and now you know exactly what to secure this network perimeter, put the appropriate firewalls or maybe devices of this. But nowadays, people are scattered everywhere. All your employees are working from any place, anywhere. Now the attack surface is increasing, a lot of blind spots that we cannot check. And this is the major problem when you think about the information security in this transformation. And then when we think about the cloud and the cloud security, we need to go back to the basis. And the basis is this very, very nice diagram about the cloud and the customer shared responsibility model. And then when you think about it, let's assume, for example, the three main components of the cloud, which is the SaaS, the PaaS, and IaaS, and of course the on-prem. And as you can see, you can find here that we have some things under the customer, and there's stuff under the cloud provider. So because cloud service split the operational responsibilities for workloads between the cloud provider and the customer tenant, it's critical to understand this kind of shared responsibility model. So let's take, for example, the top, the information, the devices, the accounts, and the identities. Regardless of the model you're going to the cloud, these will still be under the customer. This is still under your ownership and you're still under your responsibility. Yes, I've moved to the cloud. Yes, I've got rid of a lot of things like the infrastructure, the controls, the networks, the physical networks. However, no one will own responsibility on your data. It's still your data. They will provide you with the tools to secure the data, to classify your data. However, it's still your own responsibility to protect your data. Your mobile devices, it's still again your own responsibility to protect these devices. Again, you can have the policies, you can have the MDM solutions, you can have whatever. However, this is still under your own custody and ownership. And again, the identity. Yes, there will be more tools. It will simplify actually when you think about things like MFA, for example, and how we used to apply MFA maybe 10 years back on our on-premise environment, and now applying MFA, which is actually a matter of a few clicks, and then MFA is established and everyone can leverage it. So very critical and very important. Remember the problem that happened with Capital One was a human error. Yes, there's the WAF, there's the firewall that was available. However, the configuration of this WAF, the configuration of this firewall was still under our own responsibility. So think about this, always with this cloud and customer shared responsibility model. Trust but verify each cloud provider, of course. However, you need to modernize infrastructure service and establish your own modern perimeter. Remember, the modern perimeter is based upon the identity. Then when you think about the key challenges and the strategic opportunities here, you find that the identity-based attacks are up 300% this year. Information is the most attractive target. People now are targeting the information. Attackers constantly have evolving technique. Most enterprises report having more than 60 security solutions. And this is really one of the biggest problem here, which is the security solutions. Having hundreds of security solutions or tens of security solutions inside the company, and then your job as a security professional or an architect is to integrate all these solutions to have some kind of visibility, which sometimes become a very tiring project itself. Let's go to the top 3 things from my point of view when it comes to the security that falls under your responsibility. And let's start with the information protection. Then when you think about the information protection, we think about the challenges of information protection, which is the data governance, for example, how you can label, track, and show data loss or manipulation of file, how you can implement some corporate policies to protect different levels of sensitive data. So the first thing when you think about information, the first step as per the information lifecycle is you need to know where is your data. And then after you know where is your data, you need to classify and label this data and then protect this data. And then later on, you need to monitor where this data is going. When you think about a recommended approach, you need to have something that covers the full information lifecycle, starting from the discovery of the data, classifying the data. This can be automatically or by user control, and then protecting the data. So based on the classification and the label, you'll be protecting your data. So for example, maybe the public data will not maybe have a protection, the internal will have some other set of controls, but the confidential, for example, will for sure have the best controls, which might be an encryption or some other access controls and whatever. And then once this data is protected, once the information is protected, this is the first step. The next step is to monitor this and integrate it with something called a DLP. So the data is now protected. However, the data will be traveling across your network or the external network. How are you going to protect this? By integrating it with something like a DLP. So whenever you pick your information protection software solution, ensure that this will integrate with your maybe existing DLP or your upcoming future DLP solution, because the DLP will be checking this data or at all your egress points, which will be your devices, which will be maybe your mail, which may be your web, internet, maybe some cloud storage or whatever. So by checking this and applying the rules, for example, that any confidential data, any sensitive data, maybe going through a USB or maybe through a going device will be blocked, for example, and monitored. This will end your cycle, which starts by the discovery till the monitoring and the applying of the DLP. And then when you think about the next thing, which is the identity. Again, the identity is no doubt, as I've told you, we're living now in the identity perimeter. We need to productivity while security, of course. We need to protect something like the phishing and the password spray attacks. And what's the recommended thing? It's the MFA. Nowadays, password is not enough, regardless of the complexity of the password as well. In some cases, they don't need even to break the password. They can use the hash of the password, like attacks, which is pass the hash, for example. So the only thing that might protect you against these kind of things is the MFA. You need to apply MFA. And then again, MFA is not only for the admins. MFA should be for all users. Think of new technologies like the passwordless authentication, which might use the biometrics, like your fingers or your eyes or this. But think about this is the new thing and the new norm that's coming now. People are moving away from the passwords. Think about the zero trust, which is based about your endpoint state, based about your behavior, again, based about MFA, checking your identity at every state and at every point of time. Another challenge, this is for the normal users. When you think about the admin users, think about the account thefts that happen to admin users. So MFA is not enough. Think about implementing what's called a PAM or PIM solution, which is privilege access management. This is very important, where your admin account passwords are stored, are vaulted in the system. The password is rotated. Sometimes the admin will not even know the password. He'll be connecting directly to his application, to his resourcing, using the PAM solution, which will pass the password to this system. Even if you know the password, normally the password will be rotated in a very, very less time. So if the user's, for example, password is changing every 2 months or 3 months, the admin password might change every 1 day, for example. How can the admin team, your super admin, access the crown jewels? They need to access this from their privilege X workstation. So the normal machine that they use to access the internet or the mail cannot be the same machine that they can access with the domain, for example, or do some kind of admin activities inside your company. This all is a part of the whole IAM solution, which everyone needs to implement. And think of it. Again, think moving to the cloud, this digital transformation is all about the identity. That's why we need to secure this identity against the full range of threats and risks. Another important thing is the third-party account risk. This is something, that we've been dealing with in a very, very awkward way. So back in the old days, when you have some kind of vendor connecting to you, so the only thing you can do is that you will create an account inside your own domain and give it to this vendor so you can connect and start leveraging the resources. And here's the problem. This kind of third-party account is a kind of risk. It doesn't follow anything. Sometimes the people will just get offboarded from the company, leave the company, but the accounts are still there. Sometimes these accounts are shared between different vendors or between different entities in the same company, for example. This was a problem. Again, now with the cloud and leveraging some new technologies like the single sign-ons and technologies like XAML and all these kind of things, it allows the vendor to connect with his own username and password without creating a new identity for him inside your organization. However, you'll be able to apply all the rules. For example, let's assume you are requiring everyone to connect with an MFA. You'll be able to request MFA from the vendor and apply it before he can connect it. These kind of technology that eases this identity risk that we have seen. The third pillar will be the clients, will be the devices. So we talk about the information, how we're going to protect the information, and then we discuss the identity, how we're going to protect the identity, and then we're going to access this information using our identity on these devices. So we need to think about having kind of a MDM solutions, the mobile device management. And then when we think about the mobile device management, we need to think about a real cross-platform security mobile device management, which will manage our Windows, our Linux, our Mac, our iOS, our Androids, everything. Don't think about now the antivirus. Antivirus is a kind of a reactive thing. We need to think about an endpoint protection platform, a full endpoint, which sometimes people say next generation or regardless of the name, but this next generation or this endpoint will have the capabilities to detect, of course, the virus, exploits, network protection, behavior monitoring, apply things like the EDR, for example, which is the end detection and response. Post-breach and pre-breach thing will be applied, automated investigation response, advanced hunting. Think about full endpoint protection. It's not just an antivirus, because this is another misconception. People think this is kind of a normal antivirus. No, antivirus is just a reactive technology that's going away. So when you think about devices, we think about an MDM that can span over our networks, and then think about an endpoint protection agent that can be installed on all these devices. And then when we go to the cloud, we must think about some native cloud tools, some new acronyms. Again, people are fond with acronyms, and then we have some 3 acronyms coming again from, which is the CASB and the CWPP and the CSPM. These are things that you need when you move to the cloud to think about. So as companies begin to move their infrastructure and products to the environment, so the attacker interest also will increase in them. So this is coupled with the rise of these new technologies that we think about it, which is, for example, the cloud security brokers, the cloud workload protection platform, and the cloud security posture management. When you think about the cloud security broker, which is the most famous thing, and then you can see that the cloud security cloud access security broker is mainly filling the gap of the SaaS. It's acting as your proxy. It's acting as your firewall between maybe your on-prem and your cloud. So this is a policy enforcement. It's placed between your cloud service consumers and cloud service providers to combine and maybe interject enterprise security policies as the cloud security are accessed. So now you can enforce, for example, a policy if people are accessing maybe OneDrive, if people are accessing maybe Box, or people are accessing maybe Google Drive or something like this. Now you can enforce this kind of policy with your CASB. And then when you think about the cloud workload protection, this is about the protection. This is the protection of your workloads inside the IaaS, and it's mainly inside the IaaS, and how we're protecting them and how we're going to patch them. And then the complementary thing of it is the cloud security posture management. This is how you see your security, how you see your posture, how's your things doing. So you run a couple of tests, for example, a couple of simulation, and then you get your score. You get, for example, how you're doing now with the security, what's missing, what's required. This is kind of your posture management, which is very important. These are the native cloud tools in any cloud provider. So again, attacks are coming, but there are more and more tools that you need to leverage to defend against these kind of attacks. Now, when you think about the cloud drivers and the cloud challenges, so very important to think about, one of them is the risk assessments. When you think about the risk assessment, again, it's the cloud. When you think about this, you have to understand that we are not just going to the cloud. Yes, it's nice to go to the cloud. It's very interesting. It's very nice. However, we're not going to the cloud because it's nice. We're going to the cloud because there's a business benefit that need to be achieved by going that. So risk management need to be an integral part of any cloud strategy process. And then it's very funny that sometimes I'll just approach some customers or maybe some friends, and then they don't have this thing called the cloud strategy. The long promoted practice of formulating specific cloud exit strategies before committing to any cloud project. Think about this. Think about it differently a little bit. Why would you like to exit at one point of time? So if you think why you would like to exit at one point of time from the cloud, maybe now you understand why you're entering the cloud. So maybe I'm going to exit the cloud because there's some kind of regulatory compliance or legal requirements that is not fine and is not supporting the move to the cloud. Maybe there's some kind of problem with the availability. That's why I'm exiting this. Again, these things can be turned back to be the reasons when you do the risk assessment to take the decision moving to the cloud. However, these kind of things are the real challenges when you think about moving to the cloud. People say, no, compliance, regulations, they're not allowing us to move to the cloud. We have a security, confidentiality, and data control problems. Suppliers, we have the issue of supplier, the agility, availability, for example, internet connectivity. This is one of the challenges that we really are facing when you think about moving to the cloud, and you need to take it in consideration. Another thing is the cloud cost. So this is a very funny thing because the people think that moving the cloud, I think this is kind of the sales pitching that just everyone just come move to the cloud, moving to the cloud. Yeah, you're gonna have a lot of savings, all this kind of things. There's no infrastructure. You're just moving now, the operational cost, all these kind of things. And as you can see, this is what you believe from on-premise going to the cloud. This is be an expected cost. However, when you think about the real thing is that you have a lot of legacy tools, you have a lot of legacy programs that you need to modernize them. There's a lot of implementation time. So initially, when you think about moving to the cloud, there will be some initial cost, which is the implementation cost. And once you move to the cloud, this cost will be optimized and then you can start saving. I mean, again, think about using the cloud to get, for example, one CPU for the next 6 years. Has a different cost rather than getting 6,000 CPUs for the next half an hour. So that's the thing they need to have the comparison of. So let's assume, for example, that you are sufficient. You are having all what you need inside your data center or on-premise. Everything is satisfied, and then moving to the cloud and then getting and renting this service might be costly than what you have. Remember, you have already paid the initial cost inside your data center. However, in some cases, and I have passed by this situation before, where in some cases maybe you require a very, very intensive CPU. And this intensive CPU you cannot afford in your office. We used to have, for example, a kind of engineering calculations and designs that will take something like 2-3 weeks to be done on our normal servers, which are huge. But with the move to the cloud, I was able, instead of having this, for example, 32 or 64 CPUs, I was able to get maybe more CPUs. Instead of having the 128 or 256 gigabytes of RAM, I was able to get, for example, 1 terabyte of RAM. And the problem that used to take 2-3 weeks, now it's fulfilled in 6 hours or maybe 1 day. Now this is the real saving about this. Again, think about the cloud and the cost of the cloud. For example, buying something versus renting something. So buying a house for a long period, if you're ensuring that you're staying in the long period, might be cheaper, but the short-term renting will be inexpensive. But long-term buying is often less expensive. But if you expect a change in living condition, so let's assume, for example, I'm newly married. I'm just moved to an apartment, maybe 1 bedroom, and then after 2-3 years, I get my first kid, so I need to change maybe to another apartment, which is maybe 2 bedroom. And this changing style and this flexibility, that's what the cloud offers. That's what the renting thing. But if I'm starting from the beginning, I know exactly my plan will not change for the next 10-15 years. Then we need to think whether the cloud is the right option for us in our transformation or not. Another thing, which is the changed role of the IT and security. So think about this, which is the provider versus the operator. So you need to articulate the new role of this central IT function and start training and recruiting maybe the staff, the correct staff. In this new setting, the business really is becoming more technically adept, and the IT side is becoming more aligned with aspects such as risk, compliance. Now there's no more infrastructure, there's no more hardware. People need to change their mindset and to understand that we need to focus, for example, on the monitoring the performance. We need to check about the cost. We need to think about the third-party risks. We need to validate maybe our vendors and solutions. A very good example of this would be the HR role, for example. IT departments will be adapting this kind of cloud service compared to the HR department, which they're going and advising role to the different departments and helping them. This is one of the major changes that happen to the IT and the security as well. Very important thing, which is selecting and monitoring our cloud provider. This is a complete digital transformation journey. Will be aligned with this cloud provider. We need to have some kind of a win-win situation with them. So it's critically important to carefully select your cloud providers that are entrusted with your data and systems. So when assessing a cloud provider, whether it's a small or large, make sure you're going to ask the right questions. Check the compliance. Are they meeting all the compliance or not? Check, for example, their business model. What's their business model? Do they compete with your organization, maybe or not? Think about the security, of course, the responsibility, being proactive, the resolution of the problems, how are they transparent or not. The very important thing, because the cloud provider might get hit, they might get attacked, or maybe some breach. Are they transparent? Will they tell me about my data? What happened to my data? Who has an access to it? Where is it stored and why? This is a very important thing that you need to think about when you start moving to the cloud. Always remember that business and users are going to embrace technology only if they can trust it in quote-unquote secured. So my final recommendations will be cloud strategy. Again, as I mentioned, a lot of companies are not doing this. Cloud strategy should follow the business strategy. Transformation is not about just inserting some tools and adding something. This might be called automation, for example, but transformation or digital transformation is then a whole new process. It's transferring your whole mind shift. It's creating new business processes. So this must be a business strategy. And then the cloud strategy will follow this business strategy, as I mentioned. Establish your cloud security policy. It's very important. Again, cloud usage based on risk domain. We are using the cloud. Remember the risk domain, remember the governance, remember the regulations, remember the risk, the availability, the internet, cost optimization. Think about the cost. Again, we'll be living in a hybrid environment for a long time. Maybe it's wise to keep some stuff in your on-premise, while some stuff also need to be moved to the cloud. Think about this. If something is stagnant, something can be there for a long time, maybe on-premise would be fine. Remember, you already paid the investment upfront. Think about the resiliency and the portability, which is one of the major things people, I've seen a lot of companies, especially major companies, they are going into two clouds, not only one clouds, because of the portability. And all their solutions, all their technologies are based on things like the Dockers or the virtual machines, which allows them to easily to be portable, and they can move it from one cloud to another, to avoid what's called as the vendor lock-in. So if they want to move, for example, from Amazon to Microsoft or vice versa, this will be an easy thing because you're using the right technology. So when you move to cloud, think about all these kind of things. I need to be portable. I need to move at any time to another cloud, for example. And then finally, pick the right cloud provider. It's a long journey between you and the cloud provider. You must be selecting it based on a very, very specific questions, for example, regarding the areas that we discussed about the security, the compliance, and the alignment with your business strategy as well. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, and I'll be glad to have any answers I'd be glad to have any question at my social media, either my Twitter, LinkedIn, or you just can connect direct to my blog. And thanks again, and wishing you a very nice conference. Thanks.